What's up, everybody? All right, our last session of the day. This is the third session of our influence track designed to help you get more active and show up in a more empowered way on LinkedIn. And today we are joined by Chris Walker. Chris Walker is the CEO and founder of a demand generation accelerator for B2B companies called Refine Labs. Chris puts out a ton of content on LinkedIn, but I think one of the things that stands out the most to me is that Chris runs a podcast, and he's one of the few people who are doing sharing podcast content right on LinkedIn. Everybody has a podcast today, but so few people know how to show up and share it in a way that actually drives traffic and gets engagement. And that's one of the things that stood out to me immediately as soon as I started checking out Chris's profile. If you're not already following Chris, definitely go follow him on LinkedIn right now. And with that, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you to drop some knowledge on us. Tell us how we can all become better, have a better LinkedIn presence.
Thanks, Mackenzie. It's also awesome to see the people in the room, some familiar names, some people that I've interacted with before, also some new people. So great to have you all here. My core goal is to share the things that I'm doing right now, the things that I've done over the past 2 years, and frankly, the things that I've been doing for about 7 years, working toward building my own business. And then can get tactical for a while, especially the things that I see right now that are important. And then would love, if we have 15 to 30 minutes toward the end, would love to go to questions. I feel like questions where people can really get a lot of value out of here. We tend to do it on a lot of the podcasts that I do. And a lot of people enjoy it. So like I said in the chat, feel free to drop in any questions that you have. We'll try and get to them toward the end. And maybe this chat will help spark some for yourself. And so to just sort of get this started, I've been creating content for the internet since 2015. And for B2B companies for complex sales. At the beginning, it was selling into hospitals. I wasn't talking about marketing, and I wasn't talking under my own brand. I was creating content by interviewing physicians about the way that they were using our product or the things that they were seeing or different clinical trials. And then I was putting that content out under the company brand. And while I was doing that, I was tracking what was happening. So I built up that show. I did 26 episodes while I was there. I would fly to hospitals, interview some of the most prestigious physicians in those types of spaces. And then I would put out 60-minute videos. At that point, we were thinking about moving it to a podcast even. I never actually did that while I was there. And then also started to put it out at that time. Some of the best places to put it was actually on Facebook, 2015, 2016. And had a lot of success on that. And so I watched this happen as an employee of a company in a B2B. We put out this content, and then I would just watch that more and more people would come to our website and say, hey, I'd love to talk to your sales rep about that clinical trial or about trying to implement your product at my hospital or trying to do those things. As we kept building organic content, I just saw the correlation between those things, because when you create organic content, it's very challenging to say, Ryan saw that LinkedIn video that I posted last Thursday, and that was the thing that helped, that moved him over to come inbound and have a sales conversation with me. When you're doing these things, it's the collection of all of the different touch points over time. I know people that have probably listened to more than 100 hours of my podcast, have seen more than 1,000 of my LinkedIn videos, if you can believe that. And they still haven't bought anything from me. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not here to have everyone buy something for me. I'm here to share the information about my thoughts, the things that I'm seeing in the market, in hopes that it helps people, which then creates awareness for me. A lot of people know about me. A lot of people know about what I do. And then if they run into at some point where they have a problem that I can solve, or if they're in a conversation with somebody else, a colleague of theirs, where that colleague is asking a question about a problem with demand generation or different things like that, that they recommend me or that they pass on the content. And so the content creates awareness and affinity, which then leads to word of mouth and consideration in the future, is sort of the way that I look at it. And so it's a huge driver for me. I see a lot of people miss on this specific point, is thinking about the transactional or the attribution of content in the way that we're doing things. I completely forgo measurement. It doesn't matter at all. I look at our business data I look at our revenue growth quarter over quarter and watching it continue to go in the right direction, not only for my company, but some of the companies that we work with a similar type of model. And so that's basically the beginning of the framework. Now, when I started my company, it was 2019. I didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. I didn't have any employees. I didn't have any customers. And so the first step for me was to try and figure out, okay, how am I going to get a couple of customers so that I can replace my salary? So I did that rather quickly. It took me about 2 months. That's the first step. If you're trying to start a business, I'm going to try and weave in and out of B2B, business entrepreneurship in a couple different places. Got enough revenue to pay, replace my salary and do things like that. And then the next step was to figure out, how do I have a repeatable customer acquisition model? And when you're looking for a repeatable customer acquisition model, I went and asked people, like I would go and talk to people that had built $10 million consulting firms or SaaS firms or exited a B2B company or different things like that. And this is in July 2019. I had 2 customers and they said, you got to build a sales team. And then the person will go out and get business, and then you'll be able to do the work. And then over time, you can have other people do the work, and then you can just sit back and collect cash. That's the dream that they sold me. And I basically did the exact opposite of what everyone told me to do. And so I didn't build a sales team. We did no outbound sales. We sent no, cold emails to anybody. And we started to create content about demand generation and the way that we see the world. And I was lucky at that time that LinkedIn was a very high opportunity place. And if you can recognize when those high opportunity places are, if you can recognize it and then move, which is what I did. I saw one post go for 100 likes. I had one inbound lead come through during that thing. And I was pot committed to LinkedIn. And I'm going to be pot committed to LinkedIn until the results degrade. And then I'm going to be looking for another place to do it. And so just I don't spend any time on SEO. I don't spend any time spending money on Google ads. I don't spend any time doing outbound sales. I just focus on the things that are the most effective right now. And so people told me to build a sales team. I didn't do that. I started posting text posts on LinkedIn. The text posts were going well. And then in the fall, I made a transition to video. And the reason that I made a transition to video is, one, a lot of people were copying my posts. And so I would log in the morning of LinkedIn at 6 a.m. or whatever, and I would see people that were in Germany or the UK that had directly plagiarized my post from the day before and posted it on their profile. And so I started moving to video. That was one of the reasons. Secondarily, not a lot of people were posting video, and I knew that there was a differentiator there and an opportunity. And third, the business was starting to grow, and I needed a system where I could have a content machine where I didn't have to sit there and think about, what am I going to write today? And so those were the 3 drivers as to why I made that move. At the beginning, I would take free consulting calls from people, highly recommended for anybody out there that has a professional services firm or even a B2B, like any type of B2B firm, but professional services definitely. And I basically I did free consulting for people and gave people advice that other people would pay me a lot of money for. And I would record that. I would do it for free. I would record it. And then I would have video content to post on LinkedIn, which then built my audience, built my credibility, drove future inbound leads, followers, things like that. And I had that little system going. And then we started to do live events. I actually had one planned with Jake in Austin for April of 2020. Obviously, that needed to be postponed for obvious reasons. And so we weren't able to do the events, but the events were wildly successful for us. We did 2. Would have 2 people talking. It was essentially like a live podcast, live fireside chat, bring somebody in, have a conversation, invite an audience, record all of it in video and audio that then could be used and redeployed later. And then when we couldn't do the physical events, we started moving into a live Zoom to replicate that format. And so we would have 2 people talking. It was me and Gaetano Dinardi at the beginning. We did that for 6 months, every Tuesday. Going on, talking about a specific topic and answering questions for 1 to 2 hours on a Tuesday, every week for Tuesday nights. And then we started to take that content, which there was a huge volume, and we would move that, and then we moved that into a podcast. And now I want to talk through some of the details about that specific thing, because this is the number one play in B2B for an organic content strategy right now. And so what it is you need pillars in the ground, because frequency matters. And you need to be able to have pillars in the ground that force you to create content on a consistent basis. And so every week on Tuesday at 7:30 for 56 weeks in a row, I've shown up and I've had a show, and we have 30 to 100 people there. And we have that one piece of content that we create every day, which can last 2 hours, which gives us one podcast and gives us up to 10, maybe more videos that we can post on LinkedIn. And then if you wanted to move into a 2 or a 3.0, you eventually, because you put out content for the internet, other people want to interview you. So I get invites to do things like this or to go on people's podcasts, which then gives me more opportunities to create content that I can use on our podcast and record for LinkedIn video. And then we also have other little series on a monthly basis with other smart people in B2B SaaS. And so we basically have content pillars that force us to create content at a consistent rate. And so we have the Longform pillar, which then is going to get basically just drop in, put on a podcast. We do very little editing, post-production. We put a little bumper in the front and then just let it go. And then we chop up videos for LinkedIn that I publish almost on a daily basis. And when I post the videos on LinkedIn, one like core tip for people is that a lot of people take their podcast and then put a link to it, or try and sell someone on listening to the podcast, sell, quote unquote, like try and convince someone to listen to the podcast in the post. And my strategy is to communicate all the different things so that if someone doesn't want to listen to the podcast, they can get value out of just by going to the feed. And so I'll give you an example. Instead of, hey, Gaetano and I talked about marketing attribution, demand gen, different things like this. This episode was fire. You should go check it out. Link in the comments. Versus, companies really need to think about how they're doing marketing attribution. Here are the things that they need to think about. Here's a video that goes with it. And then if somebody decides they want to listen to more and they want to go to the podcast, which is a very small amount, by the way, then I link to them in the podcast, but I don't expect them to listen to it. And so it's a huge mindset shift inside of social, because marketers, and I guess everyone for that matter, have been trained to try and get someone to click off and go somewhere else. And I'm doing all of the value in the feed. It's a huge takeaway. It works on organic. It's crushing for us for B2B ads as well. It's just like assuming that people aren't going to click. And so that sort of gives an initial like a flow. I do believe that one of the reasons that my content is successful is because I have a unique perspective. I have a unique perspective because I spent a majority of the early parts of my career inside of companies, like debating with executives about whether or not we should do a video show, whether or not that was effective. And then I proved that it was effective. And a lot of other people didn't go through that process over a couple of years to prove it. And so I think another core takeaway is to make sure that you have something interesting to say, and make sure that you have your mindset in the right way. I mentioned it at the beginning, but I want to like hammer it home. Like my mindset is, I'm giving away my best advice to people all of the time because it's going to build a brand. I'm going to get sales opportunities and different things like that along the way, but I'm not doing it for that, which creates the right mindset to just help people and not expect anything back, which then creates authentic content. And so have a unique perspective, have the right mindset around it, I think is one that is really helpful to people. Frequency and consistency is something that is a massive miss by a lot of people, whether it's individuals or companies. I was reading a LinkedIn comment thread by some people the other day, which I thought was interesting. I'll share with people. And the person was like, the people that spend all their day like making videos and doing podcasts must not be spending enough time doing revenue generating activities. And I'm like, built close to a $5 million business in 2 years with no funding and no like outbound sales by just doing these things. And so these are revenue generating activities. I would argue that they're more effective than anything else that you could do. Putting out information to the world about the things that you know that can help them, which creates awareness for you, which allows people to share it, to consider whether or not to use you, whether to know more about whether or not to use you in an environment that they want to learn in, not in a cold call, not in a sales conversation that they didn't expect, that they're not in consideration, they're not ready for. You create a lot of different benefits by doing it. If you're starting a company, or if you're, a sales leader and you're trying to hire more people on your sales team, communicating the things about what you know about sales and how it's changing and what you're doing about it is going to attract smart salespeople to work at your company. One of the biggest benefits for me is that incredible people want to work here because they know about the things that we believe in and they've experienced them themselves. And so it's not just for net new business. I believe that the content helps a lot in retention. I believe that the customers that work with us believe in our model, continue to consume the content, continue to get value out of it, and understand how much better we are than any alternative that they could use because of it. So retention, net new acquisition, recruiting, and long-term upside of the scalability of doing these things. That's sort of like my little pitch on if you haven't given this a shot. I know some people in the chat definitely have. And so that's for people that haven't gotten started yet. There's just so many benefits to doing it. It requires a ton of commitment. In the early part of my journey as a business owner, I did some consulting for executives on this, for people that were CEOs of $10 million companies that wanted to do what I'm doing. And 95% of them, I probably worked with 20 people. 95% of them are not posting on LinkedIn right now because they are not committed to the process. And so, to take a little step back, like step one is to commit to it and understand why you're doing it and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And then you have the mindset, and then we can talk through tactics. And so, I think that's a good place to kind of like get it started. Let's get into questions. I see some things rolling into the chat. Like, Mackenzie, you got, can you jump in on this one? Let's see what we got. Cool.
Hey, Chris, do you want me to ask the questions?
You want to bring Jen? We can ask the questions, or we can bring people on. It doesn't matter to me, whichever you think.
Cool. Yeah. So if anyone is comfortable grabbing the mic, you can do so in the bottom left-hand side.
Grab it.
There. Yeah. Grab it and come up on stage.
Jen, I see a good question here.
Okay, Chris.
I'll take it.
Cool.
So we got a question from Jen. You do a lot of videos. Does it get higher engagement for you? So I at the beginning tracked my metrics with a tool called Shield. I don't use it frequently anymore because I have a very clear baseline on what's going on. And as you're in it more, like you have more of a qualitative feel. Like I almost don't need them. I don't need the metrics in the same way that I did at the beginning. But yes, video gets dramatically more engagement percentage for me if you look at the total number of views versus the total number of likes or comments. I think part of that is engagement. I think part of that is how LinkedIn decides to measure a view on a video versus a text post. And so my videos get dramatically lower views than the impressions of a text post. But those views to me are a lot more meaningful. And I think a view requires somebody to hit play of the video for 3 seconds or do something like that. So I can't speak 100% on this because I don't think that the data is 100% comparable between a text post and a video post. But I do know that I know the difference between when somebody comes and talks to me and they've seen my videos for 30 days versus when they haven't. It's a completely different discovery conversation or just a general interviewer conversation because they come on here and they see me in this setting and they're like, I feel like I know you because I've been watching your videos for 3 months. And so there's a different level of trust, credibility, affinity, like feeling for people when they watch you communicate through video versus when it's written. And so I think that is one of the core drivers as to why you should move to video if you want to. Not everyone needs to move to video. I prefer it at this point. I also find it to be more effective if you feel like you can do it. But tons of people also consume audio, and my text posts do very well too. So happy
Chris,
to answer a follow-up there, but that was a good one.
Chris, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you used to use Shield Analytics to track your metrics, but you've kind of gotten a feel for it. Can you maybe talk through some of that testing process? Like, how did you understand, or what different things did you try to get a good sense of what was resonating with people?
So the things that I was tracking, to be honest, in Shield was like, I was looking at total number of views. I was a lot more obsessed isn't the right word, but I was looking a lot more deeply at how many people were seeing the stuff at the beginning. I think some people know about this, but I'll share it with people. I did an experiment. I was doing a ton of experimentation on LinkedIn in late 2019, mainly because I thought that one day, someone like Mark Benioff was going to need my help with this. And that's really what I looked at it at a deep level. I pushed boundaries in ways that other people didn't. And one of the things that I did is in October, I posted a video for every day. Every day I posted a video, including weekends. And then in November, I posted a text post every day. And then I was comparing the data in terms of views, impressions, engagement, different stuff like that. And I was also able to tie it back to our inbound volume and our inbound pipeline generation, and then to the revenue that was created off of that. And the insights for this are really important to people because people get obsessed with impressions and views and different stuff like that. When I posted the videos, we got a little over 300,000 views in a month, and we had our best pipeline month ever. And then we moved to text post. I got 7.3 million views on my text post that month, a couple that went for millions of views, and we had our worst pipeline month in the company history, still to this day. And then December, I moved back to video, and we saw the uptick again. And so the impression thing, chasing the metrics that get presented in, that can be a very bad game. People, because my videos that I was posting were deep knowledge about how to do demand generation, things that were working, things that weren't working, different things like that, which attracted me to get business. And then I went for views, and so I was posting, this thing was really tough in my career, and so I decided to do X, Y, and Z, and the algorithm loves that stuff, and so it goes for 1.7 million views, and not a single person understands anything about my knowledge about what I'm doing or what I'm selling. And so that was one test that I did that's a really good insight for people. Another thing that I was looking at is the difference between engagement, like the same question that Jen looked at. Like, my engagement percentage on a video is somewhere between 5 and 10%. My engagement percentage on a text post is somewhere between 2 and 3%. And so that's something that I know. And so now what I do, because I have those numbers very established based on my audience and the videos that I post over a long period of time, I'm only looking at what is the engagement percentage on the first 100 views. And so I can post a video and in 5 minutes know whether it's going to perform well or not, because if I get 100 views and I have 12 likes, I know that I'm above my engagement bar, and that's going to carry for a long time. I can also know I had a video that went for 1,000 likes, which is very challenging on video on LinkedIn. And I knew it because I posted it, and in 100 views, I had like 27 likes. And so right now I know, and when I post something and I get 3 likes out of 100, I know that either the headline in the video, everyone knows how my headlines look in the videos, or the first sentence that's before see more, something didn't work there. And I'll go back, and in the 100, I can go and edit I can't edit the video, but I can go and edit the first sentence and change the trajectory of post just by editing the first sentence. So cool. Understanding your baseline on that can be very effective. That can work for both text or video. I know what my percentages should be within 100 views on both of those.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting because you're kind of alluding to this, but just to come out and say it, text only posts we know get circulated a lot more on LinkedIn than video posts do. And so for people who are just starting out, we often recommend, we always recommend a good mix of all of the things. Mm-hmm. But especially if you're just getting started, or, you don't have 60,000 followers like Chris does, I think it can be useful to put out those text posts to get in front of a larger audience. But it's 100% the video that converts people. It's the video that makes people feel connected to you. It's the video that makes people feel like they really want to talk to you and want to know more about your services.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And so I post almost no text anymore. Maybe I should get that mix a little bit different now, but like in our current setting, I've sort of like evolved past that. We have videos on LinkedIn, and over the past 6 to 9 months, our podcast drives most of the business. So if you think about it in terms of like depth of consumption, we have text posts where someone gets an impression, probably sees your name, might read it. We have video where someone watched the video for 4 minutes, and then we have a podcast where someone's going to listen to me talk for 4 hours a week. And so the moving more into the depth side has been really interesting because you don't need a trillion people to listen to your podcast when you're selling decent sized B2B deals for it to be incredibly effective.
I don't think you should change anything, Chris. I was just saying that for everyone else's benefit.
Let's talk through. Oh, please go.
Well, I'm just looking at the questions over here. How much time do you spend on production for your podcast? I assume you're probably not doing it at this point.
Yeah. It was the first person that I hired for the company. Everyone told me to hire a sales rep. I hired a creative videographer, someone that can edit the podcast audio, video, stuff like that. That was the first hire.
I love it.
Different idea about how to go to business development. Now we have a team of 3-4 people that are not only working on our podcast production, right? Like they're working on our website, our messaging, our pricing, but part of it is architecting the events, editing the podcast, making sure it gets posted, making sure that I have videos to post, and I'll talk through that. And so I get it. I'm involved in only the places where I need to be involved, and everything else gets outsourced. And so I need to, somebody needs to organize the event. So we have the events in place. Somebody else presents an agenda to me. I make changes if I want to talk about different things. We set the agenda. We send out an email. I get on the event and I do it. And then after that, I don't touch it again until all of the content comes back to me. And so the video gets recorded. Somebody else is going to take it. They're going to chop up and edit it. Over time, someone's going to have a very good sense. Like I almost have no edits for the headline. Like they know what the headline should be. They know how to put the captions in. They know where to clip between the start and the stop. And so someone can get a feel for that. And then they just drop them into a box drive. And right now I probably have 1,000 videos that I haven't posted on LinkedIn inside of a box drive that continuously gets refreshed to a place where I have more than I ever need to post, which allows me to be more selective on what I post.
Oh, that's really cool. And it actually kind of gets after this next question here. How do you scale production and create content? I think you kind of just answered that, but is there any other?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit further that we could scale this, quote unquote, but there's not like, we're almost close to the end, right? Like I'd like to get to a place where we post a podcast 5 times a week. We do it 3 times a week, and I post on LinkedIn probably 4 on average, 4 times a week. I could get to 5 or 6. That's just sort of like the mix that we have right now. And so in terms of the scalability, we have chosen to do all of the video editing in-house. We have an employee that does that. We outsource most of the podcast production unless we do an event and we want to turn the podcast around in like an hour. And so we have a team internally for speed. Otherwise, we have a different firm that will do the podcast, like editing and different stuff like that. And then we'll post it. And so I'm happy to get a follow-up question, but it's like you need one person, and then it's the core is the process, and then the commitment from the person who's going to be the person that creates the content. That's the 2 places where it breaks. And so I work with companies that are trying to sell to, IT directors, and they want to have their IT director, or let me make it more realistic. I was at a company, we were trying to sell to neonatologists. I'm not going to be the face of the podcast when we're selling to neonatologists. I don't know anything about those people. You need somebody that had credibility that they can trust. We had a neonatologist that worked in our company, the head of, VP of clinical and scientific education or something like that. And we could not get him to do a podcast with people on a weekly basis. A lot of companies will struggle with that because the executive subject matter expert doesn't buy into it and doesn't feel like it's worth their time when in reality, it's the most important thing they could do for the company, literally.
Well, I think you have a room full of believers here. One of the questions, So a lot of people in this room, I'm assuming, and in general, have never posted a video on LinkedIn, and maybe they're not running a podcast. How important do you think it is if I'm going to go post my first few videos on LinkedIn? How important is it that those videos are fancy? Like, how important is it that they're like have the headers and have the stuff?
So I do believe that having the header is really important. It allows people to self-decide whether or not that video is for them. And so if you want, it does drive more people to watch it, and it drives people that don't want to see it to go right by it. And so I do believe that if you want to be committed, you don't need to do it. Like, you don't need to do any of these things, but I would highly recommend having the headers in there that basically says what the video is about or something that's attention grabbing. But in terms of the video quality, the beginning of my videos were awful. Like, if you think about production quality, bad lighting, bad environments, no mic. I was using my AirPods. It just wasn't I was in a sweatshirt. It just wasn't very good. Like, to be honest, that type of stuff doesn't matter at the beginning. The quality of the information matters. And so I would highly encourage people, especially at the beginning, like, yeah, our setting has gotten better over time. Hopefully it continues to get better, but that's not the reason why people come to listen to my stuff. And so highly recommend to not let that be a blocker for you. I recognize that that's hard for people, especially people that work in companies that might get scared about what their coworkers think, or if the CEO's like, that video isn't nice enough to post. Like, I get those things. But it's really about the quality of the information, and then the results do the talking.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, Chris, because I think, if you're letting any of those things, if you're letting, I don't have a mic, I don't know how to do subtitles, like, if you're letting any of those things be a blocker, just go do it. Like, you're going to get people are going to be interested in what you have to say if your content is valuable. So,
and it gets better. Like, we didn't have a team of 3 people while we were doing this. I didn't have a microphone. Like, over time, because you have initial success, you are more committed to doing it, and you're more committed to putting the pieces together to make it better over time. And so highly recommend those things. Another core tip for people, because I think people, especially on video, want to go to the place where they put their phone up to their face and then they try and talk about something. I never do that. I always put myself in an environment and record it where I'm talking to somebody else. So I never need to make up stuff. Like, right now, I don't know if we're recording or not, but I'm just talking to people. When you're talking to yourself, sometimes you can get self-conscious. Sometimes it can be hard to think about what to say. Like, you kind of have a way out. Like, right now, if I forgot what to say, I would have to figure something out. Like, if you're by yourself, you can kind of just like pull the ripcord and be like, oh, I messed up, let's retake that. And so another recommendation as well is to try and put yourself in situations where you're already going to be communicating the things anyway, and then just record it.
Yeah, I agree. And everyone can just pick up their phone and ask themselves a question and start talking, right? And record some content just to get started. You don't need anything. So I love that. Mm-hmm. Okay, Chris, I work at a software company. We sell SMB and MM SaaS companies, sending directly to finance and accounting. I don't have a background in these areas. Where do I start to make sure we are putting out relevant content? What would you do first?
Nice. This is a really great question. And so when we get into the idea of like mid-market B2B SaaS, the first thing that I recommend for people is to make a core distinction between your organic strategy and your paid strategy. You're selling mid-market SaaS, you should have a paid strategy too, and it's going to be different. We'll just cover organic for right now. So the things that we just talked about right now, we're going after CFOs, director of controllers, people like that. You got to have, you don't need to do this, but there's 2 paths to take. One is that you have somebody that's credible, that can communicate your narrative, can communicate how your company sees the world, can communicate at a level of either authority or minimum peer. So the thing that I recommend for companies that sell to CFOs is, why doesn't your CFO do what we're doing right now, what I'm doing right now, once a month or once a week? Probably once a week. Let me retake that. Once a week, to invite CFOs to come and ask questions about how they do budgeting, how they do forecasting, how they figure out when something changes, how they should do a different model, whether or not how they build this certain thing in Excel. Like, why isn't your CFO out in the market helping your potential customers, your current customers do those things? That's one. A lot of CFOs will not do that. And then the other path that I would recommend, if you can get your CFO to do that, which I would really try hard to do that. I even recommend for companies, if your current CFO is too busy doing his or her normal job, then you should hire a second CFO that only does this. I'm at that level now with a 30 million ARR SaaS company should do that. And then the second path for you, that's probably a lot more pertinent to you. So you could build the framework for how that happens, which has a very specific purpose. And then you could do another one where you're out there and you are the host of the show, but you're interviewing people in the market. So then you can interview director of finance. You have two shows. One show is more about your company, what you believe in, potentially Q&A, subject matter expertise coming from your company. And then there can be another show where subject matter expertise comes from other people and you just pull that together and curate it. And those are the two things that I would have sort of like running in parallel. Either you can do either one at once. I think at scale, both work the best. So that would be the recommendation on organic. And then when you flow it down, I would go heavy into events, podcasts, LinkedIn. That's like the three that I would use. You can go and take the video and archive it on YouTube. I don't think you're going to get a huge, we do the same thing on YouTube, do not get a huge lift there. But those three channels, as the live event, that was the creation of the content into the podcast, distribution inside LinkedIn, inside of personal profiles, and potentially the company page, something like that is a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Start talking to people, right? I mean, it's so true. If you want to learn about something, go ask those industry experts questions and give them a platform. All the more reason to build your brand on LinkedIn, right? Give them a platform to spread their message. And you really create benefits for both parties. Okay, so we're planning to expand. This might be similar. You might have a similar answer for this, but we're planning to expand in EMEA. What would your strategy be if you needed to start to sell there? Online events plus podcasts. We sell to B2B SaaS businesses using Salesforce.
So we work with companies that try and sell to EMEA, and I know that you probably Chili Piper probably sells to sales and or marketing, and so we have people that do this right now. And so a couple of things, like, again, split into organic and paid. Organic, the strategy just got laid out. Like, have a podcast, post on LinkedIn, have good events with the right intent, which is to help people and create content, not to have someone that you can cold call after they come there, right? So that's like sort of step one. If you want to do product-focused webinars and product tours and things like that, do that. Just be very clear that that's what it is, versus if you're trying to help people, just like just set your mind on whether you're trying to just help people and create content or push the product and sell. I think just having a line is really helpful for people. So that's like, on the organic side, that's the strategy. I would highly recommend running paid on LinkedIn if you're targeting salespeople in EMEA. And you don't need to we do this with enough companies, you don't even need to translate it into the local language. UK is a layup. Anything that works in the US can be directly replicated and work in the UK. And we're even seeing success in the Netherlands, France, Belgium, all in English with ads. And so those are like two different strategies happening at once. The reason that I tell SaaS companies that are trying to penetrate a market quickly to use ads is because it's going to take you a long time to get organic going, and ads is going to make it go faster for a little while. And so while you build the organic, you can use paid to supplement it, because organic channels can take a long time, and it can feel to a executive team at a fast growing company that the strategy is not working when it just actually needs more time. And so when we work with companies, we do that process as well. We spend heavy on paid while we're hoping that their podcast can take off. Paid is working really well. We get that to the right cost targets, and then we see where we go from there.
I love it. You said something really brilliant. You say lots of really brilliant things, Chris, but on Scott Rivers' podcast about how companies, it's actually not the content creation piece of the equation that is the hardest for most companies to master. It's the distribution channels. People default to SEO, but there are so many other options. And you kind of just touched on that. You obviously can use organic reach on platforms like LinkedIn, but supplementing with paid while you get that up and running is a really good strategy. Anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, I mean, for more than 5 years, especially in like a recurring revenue model, high margin business with good deal sizes, like in those types of settings, I've thought about advertising completely different than anyone that I know thinks about it. I think about it as I'm going to guarantee the delivery of this information to somebody that I want to see it versus I want to put in $50 and I need to get 2 leads back or it's not worth it. And so the difference is I'm accelerating the process of people knowing the things that I know that they need to know in order to be more open to using our product or have affinity to our brand or different things like that. It's guaranteed delivery. And nobody thinks like that because their CFO dollars in, dollars out, let's do lead gen type of stuff on paid. Would highly recommend that because you could take thought leadership videos, you could take things about your strategic narrative, and you could publish that and guarantee delivery to every single sales and marketing leader that you want to get to about how you don't need inbound SDRs anymore because Chili Piper's so great. Like you could put that together pretty quickly, run those videos and have a lot of people see it. But what a lot of companies will do instead is that they'll post it on YouTube and hope people stumble upon it, put it on their blog and hope people search for it and find it, and they never do. Publish it on their company page with 37 followers and nobody sees it. And so if you're going to invest the effort to create the content, it's more important to spend, if you need to spend money to guarantee that people see it. Otherwise, creating the content in the first place was useless. And so I respect distribution a lot in order to create content. And so I focus solely on content consumption when I'm thinking about those things, because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll create an ebook, they'll run LinkedIn ads to it, they'll have people put out their email. Therefore, they'll assume that those people read the ebook and that ebook changed their perception about something. But if you actually track it, what you would find is that less than 10% of people even open the PDF when you do that thing. And so I've started mainly to think is somebody consuming this? It's different than did I get their email address? Did I get the impression? Did it get consumed? And did it change their perception about something?
100%. Yeah, it's it kind of gives me shivers to think about how many people focus on, oh, I got this many likes or I got this many impressions, and it just isn't driving any real business results. One last question here, Chris. I think it's asked a couple different ways. Can you elaborate on your experience, challenges, victories when you were creating B2B content for a small gated community? And then a similar question is asking about small market niches. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the question just so
Here, I'll repost the.
Yeah, thanks. Copy and paste it. Yeah, challenge victories when creating B2B confident. So it's an interesting question. I would not gate any community. I guess that's how I would say it. I intentionally put content on public platforms so that more people can discover it. I try not to lock people out into some community. And so that's a different way of looking at it. I don't try and funnel someone into a community that can be lead gen for my business or so that I can get $50 a month for them to be in our Facebook group. I don't do those things. And so that wouldn't be part of the playbook here, because I'm going for long-term awareness and brand trust and consideration. Perhaps there's a different way to ask the question where I can help get to where you go, but it wouldn't be a strategy that I take. Actually, I would rather have people come into the community whenever they want, when they see the stuff. And so if they want to come into the community, they can follow me. If they want to go deeper, they can register for our live events. If they want to go deeper, they can subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So Max is clarifying here. He's saying gated as in they are gated. They are hard to access, not necessarily that you're gating content.
Yep. So I got the right answer for you here, Max. They're hard to access because they don't believe that you're providing value for them. People are very accessible when you provide value to them. 3 years ago, there's not a single CMO that is my customer that asks in DMs to have a meeting with me about how to put their budget together, that is thrilled to have a 1-hour conversation with me, any of those things. None of those CMOs would ever have wanted to talk to me 3 years ago. That's just the truth. And now people know about me. They know about the things that I know, and the things that I know are valuable to them, and therefore they are not gated. They're not hard to access. And so that when you think that people are hard to access, when you need to look, and the real reason is because they don't perceive you as valuable. And so that's something that you can go, but it's good. It's not a bad thing. If you acknowledge that, then you can go and look deeply about what are the things that I need to do in order for this person to make me feel valuable, or to think that I'm valuable. And then you have to look at it in a very different way. Like, I'm not going after the CMO of Salesforce and hoping that that CMO thinks that I'm valuable. I put out a bunch of information, and let the CMOs that see the information and think that I'm valuable come to me. And so I think sometimes when you get so singularly focused on like one account or one person, it can drive a lot of the wrong behaviors, as opposed to putting out information and just attracting people that believe in the things that you're saying.
Yes, that's such an easier sell, right? The people who are already looking for that information online, we know all of those people are turning to, they're turning to the internet, they're turning to Google to ask questions about this stuff. So be a voice, be a face, speak up, let people know what you're doing. Chris, last question for you. All of the people in this session are interested in, upping their game on LinkedIn, starting to speak up on LinkedIn in new ways. What's one thing that everyone can go do today to come off mute on LinkedIn?
So on LinkedIn, one thing that you could try, any of these things you could do. You could go out of here and you could post something. You could get started by just posting a text post. You could go and try and find 10 people that you know of on LinkedIn and see if they would want to have a 20-minute conversation with you and get episode 1 of your podcast. Those are 2 things that you could do straight away that are the things to start getting turning. And for people that might not want to do those, go and comment on 20 posts. Comments is like the prerequisite to posting. I feel like it gets you into a good rhythm. And so comment, post, and then video podcast would be a nice little progression for people. So that's what I'd recommend.
And add your buyers to your network, right? If you're not already connected, go add new buyers to your network.
Big one. And so a couple other tips here, and I'm going to speak from the receiver of a lot of notes. I know that Jake posts about this. I believe in it a lot. I've been talking about it for quite some time. If you're gonna have a note, it needs to be hyper personalized, or I'm more likely to ignore the request than accept it. And other people are like that too. A generic request looks worse than no request at all. I never send, and since the beginning, this is not like, a lot of people follow me now, so I don't put a note. Since the beginning, when I had 2,000 followers, I've never sent notes to people when I send connection requests.